Hi guys, I want to welcome you again in our English lesson, and just to remind you, in our previous video lesson we started looking at what English grammar is, and we said English grammar is the correct use of English words in a sentence. So you are only grammatically correct if you are using, or if you use English words correctly in your conversations, in your sentences. That one means when you construct your sentences, you have to make sure that you are using correct English words at the right time, at the right place. And that is the only time you can be said to be grammatically correct. So we also agreed here that English grammar is divided into two main categories or divisions, and that is the parts of speech and the sentence. And so we went further to look at the parts of speech, where we mentioned the nouns, the pronouns, the verb, the adverb, adjectives, and so forth and so forth. So we looked at each one of them by name and by example, and the last one that we looked at was the conjunction, and then we were to finish on that part by looking at what we call an interjection. So interjections, or an interjection, is a word or a group of words used to express sudden or strong feeling. Examples being ha, ho, wow, oh no. So in a sentence you can say, oh, how I want to go home. So that one is an expression of a strong feeling. When you say, oh no, it's an expression of a strong feeling. So that's what we call an interjection. So that is that was the last part of that area. So number 2, we are supposed to look at what we call the sentence, which is the second division or the second category of English grammar. So English grammar is divided into parts of speech, and number 2, English grammar is also divided into what we call the sentence. So let's look at what a sentence is. So a sentence is a group of words joined together to express a complete thought. So a sentence is a group of words joined together to express a complete thought, or a thought, or an idea. So a sentence is made up of a group of words. A group means several or a number of words joined together. You join these words together for you to be able to convey a message, or in your conversation or in your discussion. For example, when you make a presentation, you must use sentences, and as we are saying, these sentences are made up of words that are joined together. You cannot make up a sentence by a single word or one English word. One English word cannot make a sentence. So a sentence is a mixture of words. It's a combination of words. Words are joined together to form what we call a sentence. So that is the most important thing that you are supposed to remember about what a sentence is. So a sentence is a group of words that are joined together to convey a message or to complete your thought or your idea. So that's the second division of English grammar. So English grammar is made up of one, parts of speech, and then number two is the sentence. The second or the number two division of English grammar is what we call the sentence. And we are saying a sentence is when words are joined together to express a thought. So you need to remember that. You need to know what a sentence is. You know, there are people who just talk about some of these things, but they don't know what they are. People just talk, everybody's talking about English grammar, but nobody's telling you what English grammar is all about. Nobody's telling you what English grammar is. Everybody's just saying English grammar, everywhere English grammar, but do you know what English grammar is? Do you even know when you are grammatically wrong or grammatically correct? So that is very, very important. Now, every sentence is made up of two main parts. Every sentence is made up of two key parts. Number one, every sentence is made up of the subject. Every sentence must have a subject. And then number two, every sentence must have what we call a predicate. So a sentence is divided, or a sentence must have these two parts. It must have what we call the subject, and then a sentence must also have what we call a predicate. Now, so let's look at each one of them. A subject is the part of the sentence that tells who or what the sentence is all about. So if I'm talking about, for example, this, if I say this boy is not good, then the boy becomes the subject. So a subject of the subject of a sentence is the part of the sentence that tells who or what the sentence is all about. So that one becomes the subject of that sentence. Look at this example. God is love. In this sentence, God is the subject. He is the person being talked about or being discussed. So when you say God is good, in actual sense, God is the subject. He is what you are telling us about. He is what you are. For example, when somebody is preaching, when somebody is talking about God, so throughout the preaching or throughout the discussion, you realize that the word God will be mentioned many, many times. And therefore, in such cases, the word God becomes the subject. He's the subject of discussion. He's the person being talked about. And therefore, something else about the sentence is that you could be talking about someone or something. So if you are talking about something, then that something you are talking about becomes the subject in that particular sentence. It can become the subject of your discussion, because when you talk about a certain subject in a certain discussion, you realize that the subject will be talked about quite a number of times. The subject will be mentioned many, many times. You realize that about 30% of the discussion or the words in that particular discussion will be about the subject. The subject will be talked about repeatedly. So simply, a subject refers to the person or the thing being talked about in a sentence. So please remember that. And then number two, a predicate is the part of the sentence that tells what the subject is or does. The predicate always includes a verb. In the sentence above, love or is love is a predicate. Now, when you say God is love, God becomes the sentence and is love is the predicate. Because that's what is said about God. That's what he does. There's a verb there. So when you say God is love, partially that sentence has a subject, and partially it has what we call a predicate. So when you say God is love, God becomes the subject and is love is the predicate. The predicate therefore means what the subject does. So that's something you need to remember. It is simply what the subject does. Remember, the subject is the doer. The person you are talking about in your presentation, the thing you are talking about, the subject you are talking about in your presentation. So God becomes the subject and his love becomes the predicate. The predicate is what the subject does. So a sentence is simply divided. So one, you have to remember that a sentence is a group of words that are joined together to express a thought. Then we've gone further to explain that a sentence is divided into two parts. One, the subject, and then two, the predicate. The subject is what or who is being talked about in that sentence. And then the predicate is what the subject does. We looked at this simple example. When you say God is good, then God is the subject and is good is the predicate. So please remember that. So the next item that we are supposed to look at is or are the types of sentences. Sentences are also divided into a number of groups or categories or types. We have different types of sentences. Now, sentences are divided into 4 classes according to the way they express a thought. Sentences are divided into 4 types according to how they express a thought. So depending on how that particular sentence expresses a thought, then a name is given. So let's name the 4 classes of sentences. The first one is what we call declarative. Declarative. Number 2, interrogative. Interrogative. You can say interrogative or interrogative. Number 3, imperative. Imperative. And then number 4, exclamatory or exclamatory. So we have 4 types of sentences. 1, we have what we call declarative. Number 2, interrogative. Number 3, imperative. And number 4, exclamatory. Now, these words, when you listen to these words carefully, for example, listen to the word declarative. Declarative. Declarative comes from the word declare. These are declaration. There is a declaration, some sort of declaration involved here. Something is being declared. Look at this next one, interrogative. Interrogative comes from the word interrogate. There is something being questioned here. There is something being interrogated here. And then look at the next one, imperative. Then finally the last one is the exclamatory, exclaim. So let's go further and look at each one of them. So a declarative sentence makes a statement. A declarative sentence makes a statement about something and ends with a period. A declarative sentence makes a statement about something and ends with a period. For example, a man had 2 sons. So when you say a man had 2 sons, listen to that sentence keenly. A man had 2 sons. And then go back to what a declarative sentence is. A declarative sentence makes a statement about something and ends with a period. A man had 2 sons. It ends with a period or a timeline. A man had 2 sons. So such a sentence is said to be declarative. It is a declarative sentence simply because it's making a statement about something and ends with a period. It's making a statement. You make a statement about something, but it has to end with a period. Simple declarative sentence. You make a statement about something, but it has to end with a period. So when you say the man had 2 sons, that one is an example of a declarative sentence. The next one is an interrogative sentence. The next one is an interrogative sentence. An interrogative sentence asks a question and ends with a question mark. To interrogate is simply to question or to ask. You ask a question and end with a question mark. For example, what does all this mean? That's an interrogative sentence. You are just asking, what does this mean? What does all this mean? What does all this mean? Something has happened and you're asking, what does all this mean? Something you don't understand. Something goes wrong and you're asking, what does all this mean? So that is an interrogative sentence because it ends, you ask a question and end with a question mark. So that is an example of an interrogative sentence. The next one is an imperative sentence. An imperative sentence makes a request or gives a command and ends with a period or an exclamation point. I repeat, an imperative sentence makes a request or gives a command. You make a request or give a command and ends with a period or an exclamation point. So an imperative sentence will make a request or give a command, but that command will end with an exclamation mark. Look at this example. Hurry, bring our best calf and kill it so that we can celebrate. In imperative sentences, you is understood. You, for example, when you say, you bring our best calf. So, when you say, hurry, you see, that word hurry in that sentence, look at that, hurry. It's an imperative. We are talking about imperative sentence. That word hurry, you can see it has an exclamation mark. It has an exclamation point. Hurry, bring our best calf and kill it so that we can celebrate. Look at that sentence. So that is an imperative type of sentence. And then finally, an exclamatory sentence says something with force and emotion and ends with an exclamation point or an exclamation mark. An exclamation sentence says something with force. It says something with some bit of force and emotion, and it ends with an exclamation point or an exclamation mark. For example, my son was dead, but now he's alive again. That is an exclamatory. That is an exclamatory sentence. My son was dead, but he is now alive. My son was dead, but now he is alive. That is an example of an exclamatory sentence. So we've looked at the 4 types of sentences. First, we've looked at what a sentence is, and then we've gone further to look at the 4 types of sentences, where we've mentioned and explained each one of them using examples in sentences. So that's what a sentence is. There is an assignment for you, if you wish, where you'll have to read a story, and this story will give you a lot of insight on what we've looked at in general, in terms of what grammar is. That's the introduction part of grammar. So if you so wish, you can go ahead and go read the story, understand what the story is talking about, and then you can go further and take the test. This test will help you understand better what we've looked at throughout our 2 lessons on Introduction to English Grammar, where we mentioned what English grammar is, the 2 divisions of English grammar, where we said it's divided into the parts of speech, and then we have the sentence. We looked at the 8 parts of speech, each one of them individually, and therefore if you want to have better and good practice on what we've looked at so far, then you can take the initiative, you can take the test. Read the story, understand the story, and then you can take up the test. You can test yourself, you can test your understanding, and that will be to your advantage. And so I want to say bye for now, but in our next lesson we shall start looking at each of the 8 parts of speech individually. For example, in our next video we shall be looking at what a noun is in detail. We want to look at each of the 8 parts of speech separately, but this time round we shall be looking at each one of them in detail. So bye for now, and hope to see you in our next video.